Hello and welcome to Radio Somanaut. I'm your host, Whitney Dawn Pyles, and in each episode, I'll be interviewing inspiring and innovative individuals who are impacting the world through somatics, using the modality we call body-oriented coaching. Each one of my guests is a Somanaut. That means they're a graduate of the Somatic School, an online educator that trains coaches to be stewards of the body's wisdom. We'll be hearing their stories and getting particularly curious about how they're carrying this impactful work into their lives and communities. So in the spirit of the Somatic School, my invitation to you is to embrace ease, take a breath in, and allow their words to be a welcome exhale. Hello and welcome to Radio Somanaut. This is Whitney Dawn Pyles. I am joined today by Poonam Dhuffer. She is a somatic coach, multidisciplinary artist, texture archaeologist, and alchemist of gold. She is devoted to supporting women to slow down, reconnect to the wisdom of their bodies, rise in their creative power, and build restorative healing practices together in community. Her approach is centered in somatic healing, person-centered, and creative expression. Poonam's work dances between somatic healing, emergent strategy, art, and play therapy, and ancient wisdom rooted in the Dharmic traditions. She weaves together threads of craft, movement, sound, ritual, reflection, and prayer through her sessions. I have so many curiosities about all of those beautiful words and just the language that you've used to describe your work. But before we do that, I'd love to just offer a moment of grounding to you, to me, to my nervous system, as well as the people listening. So let's just take a moment to pause and maybe orient to the spaces that we're in, as well as for you, listener, taking a moment to really allow your eyes to wander through whatever space you're inhabiting right now. And really just noticing what your eyes see when they see. Really attuning through this practice, through this experience. Just attuning to what is nourishing you, what is inspiring you, what wants your attention. And when you feel ready, just coming back to the screen for Poonam and I. But yeah, just an invitation to share in the style of the Somatic School, just sharing around right now I'm feeling, right now I'm sensing.
Right now I am feeling really grateful and grounded to be here in this space with you, and I am sensing the warmth from my fluffy shawl. I'm sensing a lot of ease in my stomach. It just feels like waves moving in and out.
Lovely. Yeah, right now I'm just feeling really grounded in your presence and appreciating that, feeling really grounded. Just feeling curious, as always, hopeful that what wants to emerge from this conversation will, knowing that, feeling grounded in that knowing, and then just sensing the snack I just had just before we pressed record. Kind of those the remnants of nourishment stuck in my molars. So really sensing that right now, and just really really noticing the textures, right, that are that my body is wrapped in. Really noticing the fabric of my shirt, and I absolutely think, because I am here with you. And this title that wants my attention in your bio so much is Texture Archaeologist. Will you tell me, will you tell us what that means, what that means to you to be a texture archaeologist?
I feel like I'm a soul traveler, and I feel like I travel from the past. I'm here in the present, and I'm piecing things together for the future.
Mm.
And I feel that deeply within my being. And I feel like I've known that for a very, very long time, but I never had the language to express myself in a way that resonates true to me. And I feel like that is what I support my clients to do, is to feel into those textures, and texture not just as a surface, but as a texture, as a vibrancy and an aliveness,
Mm.
the vibration, the colors, the shapes, the movements. And I feel like we're often excavating the sand, and we're finding all those layers and those minerals and those gradients as we're traveling through the process. And I feel like we piece things together like a beautiful patchwork tapestry, and we're creating and birthing and rebirthing something new. So it's this process of becoming and unbecoming in evolution. And it came up for me in my practice. The way that it sits on my tongue is like reminds me of like a fizzy flying saucer sweet, where it just melts, and then the paper just melts, and then you've got that sweet and that little bit of sour and a little bit of grain, but it just melts into your being. So that's the feeling and the sense behind calling myself a texture archaeologist.
Mm. It's just really nourishing to just hear you describe that. And it reminds me, so when I'm preparing for these podcasts, speaking to the listener now, typically I talk to folks a little bit beforehand, so they know a little bit about me, about this podcast, and I get to hear about them before we jump in and press record. And I just remember our first conversation, Poonam, as well as reading this bio, and even just before we hit record, just this beautiful imagery around texture and weaving and threading. Just this richness comes in with you, comes in with your presence, as well as the language you choose and in the way that you work with people, it sounds like. And from what I understand of our past conversations, texture, weaving, threading, you have a really deep history with not just that language, but those acts, with those verbs, with those actions. And so is that right? um could you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. My roots are braided back to my ancestors, who were the most incredible craftsmen and women, who were tailors, who were chefs, home cooks. My grandma was a weaver. She was also somebody who spent a lot of time creating with her hands and stitching and repairing and mending through oral traditions. So I feel like I'm bringing a lot of that in me as I'm here and I'm in connection with you, and also in the work. And I feel like anyone who comes from a South Asian culture as well, specifically from the Punjab district, is that color and texture and pattern, sound, ritual, prayer is ingrained into our being.
Hmm.
And I feel like my first love was actually color,
Hmm.
and it still is orange. This felt sense of life itself. And I'm deeply grateful that my mum has still kept a lot of very old heirlooms of like bed sheets, outfits, garments. Garments is probably the better word than outfit.
Mm.
A lot of jewelry, a lot of richness in adorning not just our bodies but our home,
Mm.
and that is through the very fibre of our being that we have continued to pass on this knowledge through the tradition of prayer and ritual, of seva, of cooking and being selfless in that act of the doing with our hands. So in our culture, we have a lot of reverence for our hands and for our
Mm.
hearts and for our spirits. So we believe that, love is shared through action, through the doing, through the act of making, that we're not just preparing ourselves, we're also supporting others to heal and feel nourished, whether that's through creating feasts on the table or being in the temple or whatever the act is that we're seeing that reflection of the divine in the being.
Mm. Mm. I love this, just this image of a tapestry
Mm.
is really with me, and just hearing you share that, just how far back, like if we're talking about the tapestry of your life and your work and just how far back that's reaching, it's really lovely to hear that. And so I'm thinking that I want to just bring this image of a tapestry um, with us into this conversation. And our thread, right? The thread through this podcast, what brings it all together is this: we're all graduates of the Somatic School. We've all gone through the Somatic School. And so to bring it back to that, but with this tapestry in mind, yeah, at the point that you found the Somatic School initially, I'm wondering what the tapestry of your life looked like at that moment where you found this piece, this thread.
Oh, what a question. Did life look like? I would feel like I was searching for lots of materials and threads and beads, and I was searching for something that I couldn't find. And it was in this search of urgency that things were not landing for me. And when I rested and had the spaciousness, the way the Somatic School came to me through a connection and a really deeply nourishing conversation, it arrived without me having to really seek it in a way. That maybe unconsciously there was these vibrations of energy that were going out, and it felt like an alignment. When I had that first call with Nathan, now I reflect back on it, it was this deep alignment and also this deep felt sense within my whole being that yes, because I've always followed the yeses in my life. And up until that point, I was a little bit at a crossroad because I think COVID had just entered the world. Um, and I wasn't sure whether to train as an art therapist or to do an MA in art and textiles. And it felt like what I was searching for didn't actually exist.
Mm.
And I remember really searching with this kind of urgency and this grasping that, if I don't sort this out now, if I don't kind of have all my things together, then, I left a full-time job, I left security, I left stability, I left travel in order to first begin a supper club. And then I was doing some facilitation and strategy. And then I was like, I've left all of that for what exactly?
Mm.
So there was this kind of, I think this scarcity in me that what is this and where am I going? And then it was just many moments of surrender and trusting that aliveness and that yes in me, that yes, it's time to rest and just let things arrive and not try to force or fix or to grasp. And the way that connection arrived in my life was life changing, because they connected me to the school, and the whole school and the whole process of the training has been completely life changing for me. And it still continues to unravel, which is always blows my mind as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like I'm hearing you say you had been in a full-time job and left that job, and so you were maybe starting some other initiatives, you were facilitating a little bit, you had started a supper club, and so you were really looking for that next thing in your life, and without explicitly going out and searching for it through a connection, you found the Somatic School. And so then from that point it was following that yes thread.
Yeah. And that's something my mum and my dad always say, that's always been part of who I am. Like I always used to say I have this gut feeling of a butterfly, and I always used to follow that. And it's still very resonant to me, not necessarily as a butterfly, but I do always follow yes, and that's the name of my brand is Yes Mate, because for me yes is a Shakti, essentially. We're saying yes to life, to the life force, to the creative force, yes to the divine. We're saying yes to ourselves. And ultimately, it's about falling in love with our whole selves as we fall deeper in love with the process. And it's only even now when I look back, I can see so many of the common threads that I've always been drawn to process orientated. That's why I studied weave. I studied woven textiles because I've been fascinated with this process of emergence. And again, with the Somatic School, this beautiful, gentle process of emerging and rebirthing and shedding and then rebirthing again. And now I can see the the similarities and why this came into my life at that time and why I'm on this path as it continues to unravel. And yes, it's a mantra. It's an embodiment of all that I've been and all that I'm becoming. And it is also a felt experience, something that we hold and we ripple out into the world through the act of making and sharing and expressing. Because when we say no, we close to life, and we hide from actually what is the truth in us. And we make ourselves small. And I feel like anyone who's listening, who's particularly a woman or a queer folk or a person of color, or anyone who's ever had the experience of being othered and marginalized, it's very easy for us to fall into that no to ourselves and no to the calling. Because this is what I feel my life has been. I've had these very big kind of callings at certain points in my life, and the Somatic School was a huge calling, and I'm so glad that I answered and said yes.
Yeah, something's coming for me. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to capture it. I mean, first, I just love the name of your business, Yes Mate. I just want to just throw that. I love that, and it's actually an abbreviation. So you're going to have to look in the show notes to see how it's spelled. And I just think it's fantastic. So that over
Thank you.
here, but there's something, I mean, there's something coming for me around, yeah, maybe this is it. So what gets in the way of our yeses, or maybe what's gotten in the way of your yes,
Oh,
you know?
shame,
Hmm.
shame, shame of. I mean, I'd love to say fear as as the overarching but specifically shame for me. And shame has been very nuanced. Even just to name that feels amazing at this point to say, like, yeah, it's been such a huge blocker, because in the shame's friend is also self-sabotage. And I guess whatever the opposite of not accepting yourself is, the
Mm.
word is not landing for me, but rejecting, self-rejection. And so that has been such a huge blocker and a barrier in me showing up for myself and for expressing myself in a way that is resonant to me and to the work and to what I'm becoming. And the fear of being seen and being witnessed, because I feel like we're very accustomed to self-censoring ourselves, especially when it comes to like social media or anything online. We want to be perceived in a certain way, and we want to control how we're being perceived. And that is many layers of that sits in shame that I've had to work through this year to let go of other people's perception of who I am, what I stand for, what the work's about. And in that is coming back to accepting my own fullness and the richness in me and the beauty of me, and
Mm.
accepting myself in all angles and all phases and shapes and forms. Because I think before there was this kind of preconceived idea of what it means to be a coach, what it means to be an artist, and, you know, all of these worlds kind of coexisting together. And in my journey this year, it's been about bringing all of these parts of me into alignment, and for it to feel like a feast, like a
Mm.
complete feast, and not to feel shame as a brown woman, not to
Mm.
feel shame as somebody who I feel has multifaceted parts of their identity that is being seen and being witnessed. And I think a lot of shame, inner shame, but also shame. And I think when you are a child and you've experienced your creativity being dismissed or stamped on
Mm.
or being too muchless, again, it kind of squashes you. And I feel like anyone who is definitely a woman or a person of color, when we're experiencing that suppression or being oppressed, then there's more of that kind of stripping away to spirit, to that deeper connection. So a lot
Mm.
of the work this year has been about self-acceptance, self-compassion, and really peeling away those layers and accepting this is the fullness of me. Yes, I can be a coach. Yes, I can be an artist. Yes, I can be really funny, and I can be warm, and I can be caring, and I can be grounded, but also I can be a bad boy dancer, and I can rustle up a feast, and not, I guess, not severing parts of ourselves in order to be accepted by people that we don't even really care about.
Mm.
So shame, I would say, has been the biggest blocker for me, because not only has it stopped me from showing up, it has also created a barrier around my own work and how I'm valuing the work, how I'm tasting the work, which then reflects in how you price and how you show up and how
Mm.
you talk about the work. So, shame.
Mm. Oh, shame.
Shame.
I'm very familiar with shame. That's a story for another day. Or maybe when someone's interviewing me. Um, I'm really interested in where shame has intersected with this part of your path, with the somatic school. I'm wondering, did that try to come in as you were making the decision to come into the training? Like, did shame show its face as you were making the decision to pursue this education as a somatic coach? And if it did, like, what did that look like? What did that sound like? And how did you navigate that and then step into this
Yeah.
space?
It's fascinating even just to be asked this question as I'm reflecting. Was shame there? No, shame was not present. What was present for me was curiosity, excitement. Yeah, I think the curiosity was so big for me. I feel like shame just stayed in its shadows, and it didn't come in. But as I was in the process, I would notice, for instance, in the reflections or maybe sharing afterwards, it would pop its head out and it would make itself known. But I think the curiosity was so huge within me, and then once I stepped into the process, it was like that curiosity just became fire with all the wood that was added from all the incredible people in my cohort. That, yeah, I guess shame didn't really have much of a space. It was, yeah, still there, but not as present as it's been this year in my life.
Yeah, that really interests me. So that curiosity was almost, um to use the a word from your bio, but just almost alchemizing the shame, or the shame was trying to come in as you were sharing, or in the reflective process, but the curiosity was stronger. But shame is something that's then shown itself as you've come out, and as you've been integrating after, after the training. I'm really curious about that, if it feels all right to go there, but I'm curious as to where, yeah, how have you been navigating shame, or where has it been coming up,
Mm.
and where have you been alchemizing it,
Yeah.
since coming out of the
Mm.
somatic school?
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel like there is so much now. I can say it looking back at it, but there's so much beauty and resource in the shame that has unraveled by me going deeper into it and naming it and acknowledging it and actually tending to its needs. And I don't think I could have done that without having the nourishing support of the somatic community that I have around me. I decided to have therapeutic support, which also was a game changer for me, with constellation work and art therapy practices. And then I feel like also by me actually creating and sharing and expressing and showing up, that has also supported shame to still be there, but it's supported it to have more resource and to feel part of this process as well, if that makes any sense at all. But I think when you experience shame, it's very easy to push it down and to kind of, yeah, almost try to sever the shadow, but the shadow is a part of us. So the work has been about really alchemizing those wounds into to deep wisdom. And I noticed this year, the more that I was in that process, then also the people that were coming to me were also people who I had been 5, 6 years ago, and I've traveled through those terrains, so I'm able to support them from a richer source of depth and capacity, because I've been untangling my own mess. Therefore, I can hold someone else's shame, all those knots and those threads that are there. But I always say to folks that this work is really about one to many. It's not just we're here with one-to-one clients or in our groups, but the ripple effects of this work is rippling. Even when we've finished the process, the container with our clients, that that integration that happens after, in between, is also, yeah, so potent and so important that we make that space. So there's a lot of, I don't know why, but this is coming up as I'm speaking. I also feel like the shame in me has also remolded me into a warrior.
Mm.
That feels really true to me now, because there's so many ideas that I've had. There's so much aliveness in me that's always been in me, and that shame has tried to protect me from being judged or being hurt, or whatever those notions were. And the more that we can tend to it, the more we can alchemize it and stand in reverence to it as well, and hold it. And so I feel like I'm in a process now where I'm actually honoring it
Mm.
and really tending to it with the gentleness and the compassion, and having a lot of gratitude for what it is showing me about myself. And I don't think I would be the artist that I am today. I don't think I would have the, I guess, the belief that I have within myself had I not tended to that part of me. I think I would have moved through this process, and there would have still been almost like these kind of repairs. So this year, the shame has been mending very, very slowly.
Mm. Mm. Also acknowledging that I did not intend to just talk about shame for the first however many minutes of our interview. What a place to go first. Um, but there's a couple things that I'm hearing that, yeah, just a couple things that are standing out to me. It's what you're sharing about shame, and that's just such a. I guess I will share a little bit about myself as a person that's 6 years sober, um, tending to shame that had been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down for years and years and years and numbed, was a massive part of my journey. And so I'm really just hearing and resonating with you on giving attention to that, on giving voice to that, on just being with it, looking at it, allowing it to exist, right? And the richness and the fullness of our being, it's there. So instead of pushing it down, just, yeah, giving it voice. And it really reminds me of, learning about practicing focusing, the focusing approach, in the somatic school, and just myself as someone who has experienced it, as well as someone who has, yeah, brought this school into my own coaching containers with clients that I'm coaching, and just really witnessing the power of giving attention to something, allowing something to be there, and just asking it what it wants for you, um, how it wants to be held, um, and that's really alive for me in what you're sharing, and I'm appreciating that, because it just feels like, and this is for me, it feels like my experiencing of some of these skills that we learned, I don't recognize until it's in retrospect, the power of just having experienced that as a human. Great, yes, learning the skill, the approach, the theory, the science, learning all of that is so wonderful, and of course that equips me to ethically and responsibly bring that into the spaces that I hold. But it's like a year down the line, I realize the power of just having experienced some of those practices, being held by my course mates, in those containers, in those breakout rooms. And so that's just here for me. And so I guess the question here is, do you feel that, or have you experienced that with any particular, yeah, any particular skill or approach or just idea that came and visited with you as you were in the somatic school?
So much I feel landed and is still landing in with me. And what feels most alive now is the easy does it motto and following enjoyment and following pleasure and feeling connection to what is non-addictive, what is nourishing, what is pleasurable, and allowing ourselves to receive that and to really savor and to stay with the nourishment of that pleasure. And that's something that I practice on a daily basis as part of just me living. And I also practice and encourage my clients to practice that as a gathering practice, which is an art practice that I've grown, that came from the school and from that particular motto of
Hmm.
how do we gather pleasure and with the sparkle hunting, and how do we notice what are we noticing in that aliveness too. And this has now been growing into essentially a gathering practice for me and my clients, where they're invited to carry a small journal, a notebook, and really to fill that up of all the nuances, all the beautiful textures, almost like a magpie, when they're gathering all the objects and things. And whether that's, a color, whether that's the shift of the weather outside, or, this connection that they see on the tube, or whatever it is, just staying with that aliveness and beginning to draw inspiration. And that was such a fundamental of the soil of the work that I'm growing now. But yeah, there was so many seeds, I feel, actually, that the school has planted within me and is continuing to plant within everyone. And the work for me has really been about cultivating that soil and nourishing those seeds and integrating and letting things grow as they want to grow, not in the way that I want them to be, and learning that in nature everything is growing together. It doesn't grow in isolation. So yes, while the aliveness and the emergence is growing, so is the shame. And as much as the joy is growing, yes, we're also tending to the grief that is here. So noticing
No.
what a beautiful skill. Just noticing what are we noticing,
Yeah.
and that is such a powerful. It feels more than a skill, it feels like a way of being, because a lot of the tools and the skills that we were taught, the way that I'm still continuing to integrate them, and we probably will be for the rest of our lives being in this process of integration, is that they're not just showing up in how I'm in connection with my clients, but they're showing up in my relationships with my family, how I am noticing what I'm noticing, but also offering that as reflection to my brother, perhaps after a stressful day at work. And I feel like a lot of everything, actually, it's not just about how do we use these skills as a coach. It's about how can we build more conscious practices and become more of a conscious, loving, fuller, richer human. So I think everything that I learn, everything that has landed and everything I'm digesting is still processing in me.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely I feel that.
Yeah.
I notice that in my own life, and I just laugh when you say just
Just,
noticing, just period,
yeah.
noticing, just, I mean, it really is mind blowing to me, the beautiful simplicity of that, and so much of this,
Yeah.
that it begs the question, why did I why was I not told to just notice
Mm,
before adulthood? Before,
mm,
you know, in my 30s, really.
mm,
um yeah, it just, it is startling, the simplicity of these skills and how much they do ripple out, not just into the way that we're working with clients, but also in the way that we are with ourselves and with
mm,
the people around us. And the idea of that, um, of the integration and the digestion and the impact and the ripple effect of this work, of this way of being, is not isolated to our professional lives. You know, it weaves its way through our entire being and existence. And then, I mean, I think of myself as a mother into my daughter Sedona's world and life, and just, yeah, I'm really astounded by the impact and the ripple effect of this work, and I'm just really hearing that in your response.
mm,
um yeah, so thank you for bringing that in.
mm.
And ironically, from this point, I actually want to pivot and talk about your professional work. So i'm just I'm just so, um I'm curious, because there's just the gathering and the threads and the weaving and the coming together and the really emergent and integrative, the nature of this work, of what you're expressing. I know that it shows itself in the way that you do work with clients, with community. And so I'm actually curious about, how are you working with people? Is it one-on-one? Is it groups? Is it in person? Is it online? Is it all of the above? What ways, what ways are all of these threads, like, how are they being expressed into, yeah, how you support yourself, into the
Mm,
way that you share this work, professionally?
mm. Beautiful. Thank you for asking, and thank you for those delicious reflections that are just laying in that and just soaking up those
Mm.
vibes. So thank you for that.
Mm.
Yeah, the work I feel like it will constantly change and evolve. And for now, it is working in a bit of a hybrid, I would say. So I'm doing the coaching, which is the one-on-one offers. I was, I did launch a group program, but the shame was so strong that I launched it once and then nothing happened. And then I relaunched it and then I withdrew myself from the process. And it's fascinating because the relationship that we have with ourselves and in ourselves is also the energy that we're pouring out into the world. And those are the people that are being connected to that. So, for instance, with the group coaching, because I was so uncertain about, is it this, like the shame showing up every now and again, those were the people that were also unsure and not sure whether they wanted to be in the group. And so it was being mirrored and reflected back by, if I'm just saying a maybe, then that's what's going to be reflected back to me.
Mm.
So my intention next year is, yes, definitely to do the group program, which I'm super excited about. That will be online. And then also I offer a mix of in-person. I wouldn't necessarily say it's coaching because it's me bringing all the threads together. So, for instance, I hold retreats. I just did an incredible winter women's retreat for women of color, which was incredible. I offer like creative mapping sessions where it's more about creating constellations and bringing in art practices to support creatives who are feeling really blocked in expressing themselves authentically, but also creating that next part of the body of work. And that is done through a lot of play and intuitive movement, really feeling into that emergent process in the space. And then I also work in terms of collaboration where I'm creating essentially these sensorial experiences where it's bringing together my love of food and storytelling and connection. So I've been collaborating with this incredible chef who is just immersed in her world of food and the storytelling. And then I'm building in this experience where we're exploring textures and constellations of connection. So it's really merging both parts in me, but not doing all the food because you have to have capacity. So collaboration is something that I'm really excited about for next year. Is also bringing other people, other artists, other visionaries, thinkers, feelers, world weavers into the space so we can co-create these new. Well, actually, they're not really new. They feel ancient to me, but we're creating this this cocoon of immersion through food, through sound, through ritual, through play and creativity. So it's a complete hybrid. The dream is to have my own studio space where I can have my art practice and also see people in a physical space. So universe, please say yes, send it my way. That's the dream. But yeah, right now it's a real hybrid, and I love it. I love that I get to support people in their process and support them through using the somatic skills, but also bringing in the therapeutic play and bringing movement and really supporting them to connect to that creative essence in the womb and building the practices that have been gifted to me through my ancestry and my culture, and supporting women to just notice what is emerging in this process. So yeah, bit of a feast for now.
Gosh, I love the use of the word
Yeah,
feast.
me too.
Poonam, I just love the words that you use. Just maybe I'm hungry as
Yeah,
well.
me too.
Um,
It's dinner time, man.
it's dinner time. It's lunchtime for me. Yeah, so really hearing these threads of um, therapeutic art, right, coming in, the somatic coaching coming in, this food and gathering, sharing space, telling story, just all of these threads coming in to the way that you're working in this moment, of course, with the caveat that it is emerging and evolving, and as you've said, unraveling, unfolding, knowing that it continues to do that. But I am curious, so if we just drop a pin where you're at now and how the work is expressing itself through you in this moment, what has changed since right after coming out of the somatic school? What has that evolution been like? And then just for context, when did you complete the program? And yeah, how have things evolved since then?
I feel like everything has changed. I feel like almost like a bit of a Rubik's Cube. That's what's coming up to me. It's constantly it was changing in the process. It was changing after the process, and it will continue to change. I think the seeds were already there in me before I started the process, but now there's so much more coherence and congruence, and I guess a continuity of my real world inquiry out into the world. And really, I guess, bringing in those threads of the coaching and the skills and the food and the storytelling, the ritual and the movement and the art making and using that as a tool for liberation and healing. And that's actually right now where the work is, that it is supporting women and queer folks to express their creative gifts out into the world. Because I really do believe at this time that, and in all time, creativity is an invitation for deep healing, and creativity holds deep wisdom within ourselves in the process, but also in the act of sharing. So at the moment, I am in this process of launching a brand new one-to-one offering, which is called the Rising Sun, and it is a sacred sanctuary for specifically women who want to birth a new creative expression out into the world, but they're feeling really blocked. They're moving through those cycles of shame and fear. And I'm weaving again the somatic coaching, intuitive movement, sacred ceremonies, making into this container for women. And all those threads were there when I look back at my real world inquiry, because the inquiry was around how can I support bodies of culture to reconnect to wholeness. And as I was
Please tell me, please tell me more. Please tell me more. So, for anyone that's listening that is not a Somanaut or not in the Somatic School, we complete the program with a real world inquiry, which I can never say properly. But as we come out of this program, it's an invitation to imagine how we're going to expand on this work and bring it into our context, which really fascinates me. So yeah, will you tell me more about your real world inquiry?
Yeah, it's so fascinating that we're having this conversation at this time, because over the last few weeks I've been reconnecting back to it and just in awe of the process itself and who I was then and who I'm becoming now. And these again were all the seeds that were being nurtured, and it was really about supporting bodies of culture to come back to this connection of home and this idea, this deep wisdom that we all are holding textures of home within ourselves. And how do we reconnect back to ancient wisdoms that have been ingrained in our being, but they are being lost because we are perhaps focusing on too much Netflix or too much consumption. So really supporting them to come back to ancient practices, healing wisdoms that are already innately within us. And how do we then from that space create something new? How do we rebirth from that place? And the fundamentals were already there in the real world inquiry. And I guess the process of integrating that and creating offers out into the world. So it was the real world inquiry. That was, I guess, one core piece, and then taking all of that and then creating offers that resonated with me at that time. And then the work that started unraveling with the people I was in connection with, the spaces I was being asked to show up and share in. And it has been this kind of evolution of call and response, essentially. So feeling into that yes and that calling and going, I don't know what the fullness of this is yet. I don't know where this is going to take me, but I'm going to follow it. And then, as my acupuncturist once said to me, the work will reveal more of itself the more you're engaging with the work. And that never ceases to amaze me at the time that he said this and what was happening in my life. And I feel like it is so resonant to the school and to my personal process, that the more that I've said yes to it and allowed it to express itself through me, it's showing me what the next piece is. And I don't think we would be having this conversation right now had I not been following all those yeses, had I not felt into that curiosity, and also be I guess, reflected back from the universe, because as I was moving through this process, I was getting approached by galleries and like global brands to come in and share what is, what is purpose and what does authenticity mean, and all of these kind of, I guess, buzzwords. What is community, and really speaking from my process in that space. And yeah, that wouldn't have happened had it not been for the school, had it not been following the full process, getting to the real world inquiry and actually sharing. Like, that's such a huge part of the creative process, is sharing it out into the world and resting and marinating in yourself and letting go of control. And I think any Virgo or creative or perfectionist, or probably anyone who finds it tough to let go of control, would struggle with this, as I definitely did. There were moments, even in sharing the real world inquiry, that is actually when I noticed shame was beginning to show up, because I decided to create like this whole like collage and do a PDF and then do a recording, and then I remember uploading it and then thinking, shit, what are people gonna think? Oh God, this is too much. I've poured too much into this. I've given too much, um, and it's still a working document for me, which is incredible. Like, I come back to it, and I feel like I graduated in 2022. So I think I started in September 2021, finished in 22. But don't quote me on that. But yeah, it was definitely in COVID times. So yeah, approximately that sort of timing.
Man, that is like Virgo moon, Virgo rising, but that there. But gosh, you've just named something that I've also felt. I remember, so for my real world inquiry, it was around intuitive movement and bringing movement into coaching spaces. And I I wrote something, but I also recorded a video of I recorded a video of myself just in my own intuitive movement practice, and then almost voiced over part of this idea and put captions in there on whatever Canva,
Pick up camera.
whatever I was using at that time to put text on video or photo. And I remember that shame in me. Like, oh, this is a lot. This is different. I feel exposed. I feel exposed. Is this resonant? Is this true? Is anyone going to get this? And there's something there about just you calling out that was the moment where kind of shame began to creep back in, that I also felt. And there's something about, you're in this container and you found this community and these people and this way of working that does feel resonant for you, and like it's speaking to a part of you that wanted acknowledged. As I've been doing this podcast, that's been coming up a lot, is just just this validation of coming into the space, the container of the somatic school, the training. But it's almost like you've been guided, and you've been you're learning these skills, and you're feeling safer and safer within this cohort, within this microcosm of the larger community. And then it's like, oh shit, but now I'm kind of stepping out of that and into the wider, right, into like the wider Somanauts community, which is even bigger now. And then into the world, into your world, into your work. And it's so interesting that with that stamp of, this is how I see myself carrying this, that is where the shame begins to trickle back in, when it's on me and what I'm experiencing, and how I feel I can amplify this to support others. It's just, I'm finding that really interesting. And I guess I'm just, I share that with you. And I guess just yeah, what comes up for you as I share with you that yes, that happened for me too.
I mean, my whole nervous system is like, oh my goodness, yes, the exposure of the fullness of me and what I'm carrying and how I want to express myself and take up space. And that feeling of, yes, safety throughout the whole process of being in the school, being witnessed, being celebrated, being acknowledged. And I didn't receive that, I think, for a very long time, which probably is a story for another day. But yeah, that safety to create and to express and to name, and then yeah, that really landed for me, coming out of this cocoon and then kind of, peppering forward towards the world and my world. And oh wow, what are my family going to think of me? Not my immediate family, but I've got a huge extended family, and that's when the shame started to rise, actually. Yeah, and that feeling of, a very familiar feeling of being too muchness, and being too sensitive, because that's what I got told a lot in my childhood, is too sensitive. So those projections then getting bigger in that shame, and then it's fascinating though, because I actually was safe. I was safe in my body. I was safe in my home. I'm safe with my immediate family. They're very encouraging and very supportive of the work that I do. So it wasn't even this inner circle. It was I guess the ripples of the outer world, and also the fear of actually not of failing, but the fear of actually being successful. And the fear of what does happen if I get the studio? What does happen if all of these things that I once desired but wouldn't allow myself to move towards? What happens if I start moving towards them? Who do I then become? And sitting with, actually, also the notion of success isn't, for me, I'm not driven by money. I never have been. But success for me is slowness, is peace, is contentment, and as a generator is satisfaction, feeling that full-bodied yes. And then what happens if my life does stop fully feeling like that? Then what? And I'm still finding out. I'm still discovering. So the safety, and somebody said this to me the other day, that I was always safe to create as a child in my own home, in my own cocoon, my own experience, but it was the external world that made it feel too much, too sensitive, that too muchness that was then projected, that made me kind of hide in almost a shadow of me.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you
Oh,
brought human design in because that's my
that's
bag.
your jam, yeah.
And then you define success, which is my signature theme too. But success is slowness, and this really acknowledging this fear of success, and this, the differentiation between it's safe to create and hear and be here and say these things, believe these things here, but it's going out there and really putting work out there in a really tangible way is where that creeps in, where that fear of success creeps in, and really that's landing with me in a really massive way. And so I'm just curious, how do we navigate that? How do you navigate that?
I come back to my texture of truth, and I come back to that anchor that is deeply rooted in the soil of slowness, of love, and I connect back to all that is unseen. that unfathomable power, or Shakti, as we say in our culture, that is here within me, that is around me, and that is always holding me. Even when I'm breaking and I'm wobbling and the shame is rising, I'm always held in that, and that is the truth. So learning to return back into my texture of truth and centering in that is a daily practice that I practice. That is the truth, because a lot of, I guess, the projections, the judgments, whose voices are they? So it's really about coming back into this realm of truth that has always been here, that's ingrained in me, that is coming from the past and is holding me here in the present so I can move in the future, and surrendering without trying to control, I want this to go this way. And I feel like my journey and my path is showing me that the more that I learn to surrender, the more flow, the more ease. Not saying that there's not going to be challenges or the shame rippling up, or even the notions of failure, but just letting go of what my plan is for me and surrendering it to that divine Shakti, that you got a 5D vision, so you do your thing. And as long as I'm staying true to my texture of truth, saying yes, I can only do what I can in my fullness of my capacity right now. But returning to what is true to me. And I remember one of my mentors, he said to me that when you say something, it doesn't need to be complete, but it does need to be true. So landing back in truth is something that I'm learning to practice more and more, and it feels like it's such a potent part of me in the work, and also sharing that with others, that return back to what is.
Yeah, really hearing this, coming back to your truth, coming back to your yes, trusting the process, examining, questioning the external voices, the what's happening out here, examining where that comes from, bringing curiosity in. Where is that shame coming from? What's conditioning me? And coming back to that texture of truth. I love that. Yeah, texture of truth. Thank you, Poonam. I'd love to just round things out, and just leave something for the listener here. Not that they don't have so much already. But if you could leave the listener with an inquiry, something to ask themselves in their own processes of unraveling and unfolding, what question would you encourage them to ask themselves?
I would invite you to notice and to feel what is your texture of truth, and to give it shape, to give it color and form. And I would invite you to connect in that every day as a daily practice.
Beautiful invitation. Oh, just so, excuse me, so, yeah, just really sensing a real connection with you and just what you've shared about your journey, and a real resonance there. And I'm feeling that in my jaw, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
So me too. I can't stop smiling.
Maybe maybe a compulsion to express my truth. I'm not gonna analyze it, but yeah, just feeling this real sense of connection, and just this reassurance, that wherever we're at in our journey, that there's always an invitation to be curious, explore, and trust what wants to emerge. So that's all with me. And I guess I'd love to, I just said that the last question was the last question, but really the last, for you, yeah, what are you taking with you from this conversation?
I am taking the whole of you with me and the whole of our connection and what has been emerging in this conversation. And I'm taking a lot of this, it feels like a celebration. You know, when you're getting that kind of excitement that, yeah, there's something big, like a big party, that kind of, excitement and the power of connection and community and conversation, and that we need each other, that we cannot be doing this work. We're never doing this work alone. Even when we think that we're alone, even in our process, there is still something far greater holding us and bringing us the right people, the right resources, and everything all in that as we come together. So yeah, feeling very grateful, and I'm taking a lot of this kind of like excite. It's like a like a I don't know what this is, but I'm just like it's like a this. It's like a jiggle.
Yes, a jiggle.
A jiggle, yeah.
I'll take a jiggle.
Yeah, take a couple jiggles. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me to chat and to jiggle with you.
Yes, anytime. Poonam Dhuffer, everyone. If you'd like to learn more about her and her work, check out the show notes. And you can learn more about the Somatic School at that link in our show notes as well. So if you found this conversation nourishing and inspiring, please continue to follow us, continue to follow Poonam, and I hope you've, found something to take with you. Thanks for being here. That's our episode. That's our show, folks. I hope you found something nourishing, enjoyable, or inspiring in today's episode. Thank you for being here, and see you next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram at Radio Somanaut. You can also find out more about the Somatic School and our accredited diploma in body-oriented coaching at thesomaticschool.com, or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. This is Whitney Dawn Pyles, encouraging you to stay present, stay curious, and stay connected.